set everything up here. Let me do a quick microphone test. I know, when I start streaming beforehand, I just kind of did. It's actually working just as I expected. Because sometimes I have to restart my console for the microphone to actually work well, so. Alright. So this stream, I guess I'll be teaching. Well, actually, this is more of a test stream. Because most of my other tutorials aren't really going to be like this. But basically, I'm just going to try to get that tutorial mindset kind of pinned down. So I'm just going to do a random tutorial just to get things started. So, in this tutorial, I will teach you how to make blankets. Now, there are a few ways to make blankets. You can go for the realistic blankets that are very thermo inefficient. For a very nice, small, realistic blanket, it would take about 50% of the gameplay thermo, even with a lot of optimizations. And I will do tutorials on how to optimize things in the future. I'm incredibly good at it. But for this tutorial, we're just going to do blankets. So let's start off with the very realistic kind of blanket. Now, there are two ways to go about this. You can make it 2 slopes per cube or per square, or you could just make it a total square per square. You can do a lot of things per square. For this tutorial, I'm going to do 2 slopes per square. So over here I have another sculpture that I'm going to get to a little later, so don't worry about that. Alright, now we have our 2 slopes, though I should actually make this a live clone. So I'm going to do that, if it will actually clone. Thank you. For some reason that took a while to process. Okay, now when you do something like this, you do want to turn on grid. I did forget to say that. The grid is over here on guides. You want it to be 1 grid. If you want to follow this tutorial exactly, make this little shape here, and then you want to minimize the grid a little bit, just by 1. So you want to make the grid 50% scale. Once you do that, you want to go to gadgets. You want to go all the way to the right to connectors. You want to use a ball joint. You don't want to use a bolt or anything else, only a ball joint. So once you connect the ball joint to the other side, you'll get the little notice that you made the objects movable, but you do want to actually go in and tweak both of the sculptures to be movable, because it'll only make the connected movable versus the or the child connection movable versus the parent and child connections. Okay, so once you do that, you want to turn down the physics cost, of course. You want to turn down the density and maybe tweak a few other things, but this is pretty much all you have to do. The other things would be more optimal in terms of saving on thermo. But for this tutorial, we're not going to go too in depth or into detail for that, because I do want to make the other tutorial, and there are some cool tricks that not a lot of people know that I kind of want to actually show off in a new light. So, of course, you can turn the object detail down just like I did. Looseness, by the way, does not affect the thermo. So if you want an object to be more loose, you have to turn its graphics down if you're doing it for thermo. However, or detail down. However, turning something's detail down also changes the physics of it, as like down to physical structure or physical data. Physics cost can get lowered. So there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. Anyways, once you do that, you want to copy and paste this little shape here, and basically you want to rig whatever is over here to the other shape. Now you again actually want to do live clones instead of a normal copy paste, so that you get the option to edit everything by just kind of doing that. As you can see, everything gets edited. So it's definitely better to do that. All right. So now for the next bolt, when we get into that, you want to pay attention to how you bolted it. So where these yellow connectors are pointing, you basically, well, from the gizmo in the middle, this purple ball joint, you basically want to make your connections follow that. So I'll put the yellow down here since, the yellows are pointing down. You want your yellow to also, the new yellows to point down. Make sure every yellow points down in towards the direction. So these are going down to the right. So when you make a real clone of this, so let me turn that on again. The live clone. Once you clone this horizontally, you'll want to get more ball joints. And since the yellow goes to the right from my perspective here, you want to connect it from right to left. And if you see a blue connector like this, don't worry too much. That's just showing that the group of connections are connected already, and sometimes the game doesn't think you need this, but for this tutorial you will. Now if you double select this, it should select everything around here versus double tapping here, which doesn't. So you always want to make your selector a different color for debug purposes. Once you finish the blanket, you won't need to do that. But basically you get the whole idea around how to connect this properly. So next is basically just to live clone this a lot of times and rig it a lot of times. So we're going to double tap, copy paste, and rig. So go here, bottom up, and we will start doing a few other things with it once we have a nice size to it. So double tap, actually. And again, live clones are helpful to make it so you can edit every single, I'm just going to use the word tile at once, though they're not really tiles. I mean, they are in a sense, technically, but usually people use that word for other things. So there you go. Very simple, just get those connections done. Now chat is also broken. Again, I don't know why I have the chat turned on. Chat never works, so maybe I should stop enabling that. It's kind of a, I think it's just an option I just get too lazy to turn off, unless it turns itself back on. I do remember turning it off last stream. For some reason it's on this stream, so it could be the case of it just turning back on all the time. Could be something in default settings somewhere else that I need to change. But I might actually open the chat just in case. I'm going to do that right now before I start this next rig. Let me get my phone. That is at 15% battery, but I do take good care of my battery. So at 15% might last a few hours. In fact, let me turn the brightness down to a minimum just to really make sure it lasts those few hours. Okay, now I have chat turned on. Oh, hello, Toasty Toaster. Alright. Now that chat is turned on, I can continue doing what I was doing. So, this will be, pretty much this last rig. And then we'll test out the blanket, and we'll have to do some other stuff with it later. You know what? I don't think I made those real clones. Hold up. I will have to undo. Because they need to be live clones. And I did forget to do that. I think. So, always remember, live clones. Okay, I placed that one in a weird spot, but there's no harm in moving it. Just double tap. Oh. And move it. There we go. Alright, now time to change the color of these selection boxes so that's not misleading. And now it's time to re-rig. Okay. So remember, right to left, down to up. That is what these yellow connectors are telling me. Okay. Alright. It is rigged vertically, now horizontally. Even though the bones were horizontal bones, but the structures or vertical. Vertically rigged the structures. Let's continue going down to up. Very nice little pattern we have here. Alright. Now to test two things. If things went well, I should be able to edit every tile at once with one press. Okay. That is a very good sign. Now, just for a double check, though I am pretty confident that everything's movable, I'm gonna double tap movable. And I am going to use this little thing I created here, which, by the way, if you're going to use something to randomly put something on that's a sculpture, it's always good to use this shape since Dreams really likes this shape. Like, it takes the least amount of graphics, which is interesting. And though it's about surface area, you'd expect a sphere to do it. So surface area might be a factor, but there's something else also, because this shape, for some reason, does well. Okay, so I did forget one thing. Now, since we can select everything at the same time, like this, there are a few things we can actually do with every bolt at the same time. Whether it be springiness, which isn't exactly something you want to turn on if you're going for ball joints, or tightness, which is kind of nice if you're going for ball joints. Probably for this blanket specifically. But since the scale is really big, the blanket is going to act weird. So this is why I said it's going to take up a lot of the thermo. You can already see right now it takes up a good percent of that thermo, which is very unoptimal currently. But this is kind of what happens when you're going for the realistic blanket style. Now, as I said, in this tutorial, there are going to be 3 styles. One is going to be the least optimal, but the best visually, I guess. And the other 2 are going to be more optimal styles. Okay, so now you want to basically make this 50% as big as it was. Now that you've done that, you can press triangle while grabbing it to make sure it's on the grid. But it should be on the grid anyways if you've done everything correctly. And I did everything correctly, so it's on the grid. Alright, and you can already see it's going to take about, nearly 70% of the thermo, which is insane. Now, if we were doing the same thing, but with squares instead of, like 1 square per square space instead of 2 slopes per square space, it actually would have taken 50%, saving a good 20%. But, yeah, it's basically, well, like, okay, if we're going by thermo numbers, saving a good 19%, but I'm rounding, pretending 69 is 70 and 49 is 50. Alright, so let's get the connectors out. And now for rigging, you want to turn your grid snap down by 1, since we just changed the scale down by 50%. A 50% relative decrease in our, movement space, or our space between movements, is really good. That creates a lot more free space for us to work with. Let's continue rigging this from right to left. When I'm finished connecting all these connectors, the thermo should be around 70%, so it's a little insane. The next method might be favorable for using it in levels. This is more or less something you just kind of use as like a showcase, where you have a blanket, maybe a block just somewhere there where the camera pans to, and then the blanket falls on the block. This is looking quite something. I probably forgot to do live clones, but it's only 4 different tile spaces, so it's not too much of an issue. I can remake it, the other 3 tile spaces, since it is a tiny bit of re-rig, but I am going to not do that just for the stream, because I don't want it to drag on for too long. So, just going to do this. And of course, I will release this as an asset. Not this version of it though, where it's 2 slopes per square space. I mean, I might release this version too, but definitely for the community, I'll release the square per square space blanket, which takes up a little bit less of the thermo, but still, it's still as visually pleasing. Okay. Well, this one isn't exactly visually pleasing, but you could imagine if you, did a little bit of art with one slope and then all the slopes changed to fit that. It's definitely something to think about. Okay. So I'm just going to do a little bit of positioning right there, and we are going to just check it out real quick. It's a very long one. I should put on collide with connected objects, because then it's going to do this thing where the objects just kind of go through each other, and it leads to this issue where the blanket just kind of never stops flopping. So about 1,248, yeah. All right. Connect with collide, or what? Collide with connected. All right. Now you're gonna get somewhat of a better result, where the blanket actually just okay, hold up. Let me move this a little bit more into it. Actually, let me make this a tiny bit bigger, because too much of it flops off. It doesn't look nice. Yeah, that looks nice. But as you can see, it's pretty good. Like mechanically, definitely fits. And you could imagine a scene where you just have this flop down, you put something on top of it. Maybe people might get excited about looking at that, since that's not usually something you see in dreams. Fabric physics like that. You have like paintings, but it's mainly fake fabric physics where it can go through everything. Alright, so this is basically your average, take up a high percent of the thermo, realistic physics kind of blanket. So we're pretty much finished with this style. I do want to keep this in the level, even though it's an incredible strain on the thermo. I might just see if I can somehow, what, I'll do something with that later. Alright, so let's work with the next style. So this sculpture I've been saving exactly for that next style. That I showed off way earlier this stream. So what you basically want to do is you want to create a few measures for this here. So I can remake this sculpture. It's actually not too difficult. The holes you can place anywhere, and these letter C's, as I'm going to call them, they're kind of like hooks, but they're pretty much just floating hooks. So they're like little C's. If you do it like this, you can just you can't exactly place these anywhere, but you have to place them where the holes meet when they're, an exact amount of space apart, depending on your grid, of course. So over here, as you can see, they meet, and if I put something in between them, or at least somewhere where one flops off and one doesn't, or one slightly flops off and the other one's like very obviously flopping off. Oh wait, I forgot, it's too many moving objects. Hold up, let me just make this blanket unmovable. I think that should alright, so this is just kind of flopping off anyways, so let me move that somewhere else. Okay, yeah. So as you can see, it's basically the sculpture blocks the other sculpture from getting away from the sculpture. Though with something like this, you do want to work, again, just like at the other blanket, at a very small scale, because at a large scale, the sculptures will fling the other sculptures away and they'll fly like way over there into nonsense. This, by the way, has nothing to do with the third style of the blanket. I just kind of made this. I don't know why. It's just there. Alright, so let's basically continue the second style. It's very simple. You just kind of copy and paste a lot. It's actually, this is the easiest style also, because it's very fast. You can make them live clones if you want to, which I'm actually going to do that right now. I'm just going to make them live clones. But another thing one thing that's bad about this style, however, is, how it has less freedom. Because you're using a sculpture, right? If you want to do re-sculpting with live clones and stuff like that, there's a lot of spaces you have to avoid. Those holes, those connectors, quote-unquote connectors, just going to call them connectors. Like editing any of those could just kind of get the blanket to be unstable physically. Okay, why are they... Okay, there we go. Sorry for that incredibly uneven spacing. There we go. That should be even. That's even. Alright. So I'm just gonna get a nice little 1x1 aspect going on. I'm just gonna group all of this. Which this isn't even exactly 1x1, so this is like nearly 1x1. It's like 5x6. There we go. Well, 6x5 if we're like using, aspect rate, like how you actually determine aspect ratio. 6x5, not 5x6. Let me turn that off. Alright, so small scale, very simple. You do want it to be about 50%. For this one, I'm making it about 25% because I want to work with the very nice tiny scale over here. But 50% should work just as fine. Now, yeah, so you do want to change the physical data too, which is something I forgot about. So the physics cost. When it's a certain size, this and this changes dependency. So hold up. That's pretty good. Almost works. And that's another thing about this style too, is that, again, since it's unstable and there's not a lot of freedom, here, I'm just go back to 50% size. There's a lot of things that can also mess it up too. But assuming you don't have too many moving objects in your scene, this alone shouldn't exactly harm it too much. But it's always nice to take it into account that because, again, it doesn't use any logic or anything like that, you just. It's a bad idea. It's basically a bad idea. Which is also why I didn't want to show it first. But done correctly, just like most things, can work interestingly well. Alright, so I'm going to get this whole item here. I'm going to bring it back to 100% size. And see how it acts. So this might be too many. I could make this a little bigger just to put less strain on the weight. Oh, and one more thing I forgot to do. Since it's at 100% size, see, the bigger something gets, as I said, the dependency changes. So now you want to get everything, you want to make the density lower so that it, can actually hold itself. Well, the things that can actually sense itself hold itself. There you go. This kind of looks better. Though some of the stuff are still flying off, so. Yeah, kind of bad, but. Yeah, this is a second style. It's. It's something that exists. And there's actually a fourth style. Like, I'm about to get onto the third style, but there's actually a fourth style I, however, do not want to show right now because it's actually. See, the fourth style is something I'm theorizing in my head, and it's. I don't want to try to show it off when I don't even completely understand it yet. Or, like, I wouldn't exactly say show it off, but more or less, show people how it's done. Okay, so the fourth style, or the third style, is kind of just like the second style, except it's actually way more optimal. Or not way more optimal, way more consistent. The issue with this style, however, is so this is going to give you a pretty good hint of how the style works. You're going to have little hills and bumps now. Since it's a blanket, it's not too much of an issue, but a lot of people really like flat blankets like this or like this that, have the hills and bumps come from, how it conforms into whatever it falls on. Having a blanket that naturally or normally, even when laid flat, has got these hills and bumps are something that are going to drive people a little bit away from that. But if you're really good at hiding it, and again, with live clones, you can hide that pretty well. This one does actually have a lot more freedom than some of the other styles. So you can put like a nice little slope here, and the bumps would be hard to, detect. Okay, so if I have this set up correctly, the sculpture should be right. Yeah. Alright. So this is pretty nice. Now this blanket over here, I'm just going to make it not movable so it doesn't take up any move data. I'm just going to call it move data. Right? Oh, and let me turn off collidable just so it's optimized a little bit. Okay. So you want to make these movable, of course, just like with the last style. Blip. Okay, blip. Oh, and of course, density down to 0%, since we're working with a large scale. Alright. So I'm going to get my trusty... I'm just going to call it a blood cell. My little filled donut. My little thing. I'm just going to kind of continue going. Oh, yeah. You might want to... Hold up. Before I continue this, you will have to copy and paste this. And I'm just going to bring that up here, but to the right a little bit. And then you'll want to copy this, bring it down here. 1, 2, 3. There we go. Okay. Now we're ready. Live clones are also recommended, so I'm going to do that. 2, 3. Place. Okay. That was horrible accuracy on my part. Alright. I'm just going to try something before I do the next copy. That should be good. Okay, yeah, that's good. Just really hope nothing pushes each other out, or else I'm going to be doomed. Alright, live copies. I blinked out for a moment. Okay. Now for all three of these, I only need two of these. I think we have a nice rhythm going on with two of those. So copy paste and flip. I knew it. I did move one of my objects a block forward, or a grid space forward. Like, I can move it 2 grid spaces forward, but I need to move this 2 grid spaces back. There we go. Well, not exactly 2, more like half of a grid space. If we're talking relative to 1, because I am at quarter grid space right now, which is the best experience. Alright. Alright. This is a lot of cloning going on. Oh, I have to select these very carefully. It's another thing about dreams. When selecting objects, you kind of have to be all slow and careful about it when it's a lot, or else your imp is just going to decide to miss any. Even if you don't miss any, there is a certain interval that the selection has where just moving through objects too quickly can basically make it miss. I did forget horizontal connections, but at least they're live clones, which means I can just add them straight up. So I'm gonna do that. So I'm gonna make it about here so it's actually easy to find. So that's 1, 2, 3. Actually, I'm gonna go backwards. It's easier that way. Alright, 1, place. 2, 3. Alright, that's nice. We have a little J here or something. Okay, I don't know what that shape is. But we got a shape that's gonna connect them. That's all we need. Alright, reselection time. Make sure I didn't miss any. Ah, yes. There's the ones I've missed. That's all of them? Nope. There's 1. There's 2. Ah, that's all of them. Alright. So now these are connected. We've got to do live clones again. Now they're connected. Now keep connecting them. Oh man, third style is just so strange, isn't it? So very strange. Alright. My only problem with the third style is just how many sculpts it has versus style 2, where it's so much that, you know, it's going to take a lot more move data. Okay, hold up. Forgot it's upside down. It's like inverse. Oh, not inverse. Wrong word. I don't know why I said that word, but it's like reversed. Alright. Alright. That's weird. Alright. Let me actually make it high physical data too. 1, 2, physics cost on high. Oh wow, that's weird. They just kind of went through each other. Funny, because they're not going through each other when I pick medium. But again, scale dependency. So if I'm going to put the physics cost on high, I'm going to have to change the scale. Let's make it smaller. I feel like that's... Oh wait, let me do gravity too. Actually, I can't do gravity. Right. These sculptures don't have that property. They have ignore gravity. That's something that exists and sculptures do have. I can put a chip on the group, however, to make it anti-gravity. Or I can use a global gravity tweaker, but why would I do that? I do want it to be local, not global. Though in Dreams, local means something else, since now we have things like variables. Okay. Just keep collidable. Medium. Ah, that's kind of good. Okay, this scale is pretty good for medium. Look at these guys. They haven't even fallen off yet. I mean, those two down there did. But I mean, like, look at these guys. Anyway, Style 3 is just like Style 2, but definitely more consistent. As you can see, once they're at rest, they're at rest. Versus Style 2, where, yeah, it can kind of be at rest, but then they start jumping. This one's pretty still. There are the two objects that fell into the void. They finally got deleted. Alright. That was a very rough, kind of rocky path to what I was doing. But this is my first time doing any type of live stream tutorial on anything, okay? And so I just kind of decided to do blankets as a test, because you don't see a lot of these around Dreams, I guess. And I mean, not only you don't see a lot of them, but you don't see them in the caliber of something like this, where it's like, you know, it's got these realistic kind of blanket physics, and though it kills the thermo, which is probably why you don't see it. You know, it's definitely something. Not definitely. Maybe like in small groups, maybe something to talk about when addressing things like fabrics and stuff like that. Little ideas for how to make things like t-shirts and stuff like that. Again, I'm gonna say it twice in Dreams. So when I get the fourth way pinned down to basically make this, I will make a tutorial on the fourth way to make a blanket. But right now, I am actually just focusing on undoing until I get the original blanket of mine, as I can show you that as my favorite one, the original blanket, which I actually made it based off of the blanket that I currently have on me. It's a nice white blanket. You'll kind of see my little recreation of it in Dreams. You might know what kind of blanket it is too. It's very popular with anyone who buys blankets. It's a very, very popular choice. Okay, there is a lot of undoing going on, so I'm actually going to undo faster. Of course, things have to load, so it's going to slow me down sometimes. Oh, okay. So this is basically it, except it's not white, but I can make it white. So, where is the selection corner? It is... Oh, I think I was just at it. Yeah, it's this. Alright. Whoop. There we go. And this is basically my blanket. This is also the blanket I'm thinking of releasing to the community. Well, not thinking of. I'm going to release it to the community. But I will change the title to something like, you know, unoptimized or something like that. And when I release Blanket Style 4, which again is theoretical right now, but I've got everything already set up in my head, just have to hope it actually comes out the way I want it to. Or if I make an incredibly stable Blanket 3, I will also release that with only live clones, so that everyone can very easily edit it, increase the size, well, not exactly the size, more or less scope into it, increase the clones, with ease, and just keep the blanket working like a blanket. Yeah, that is pretty much it. Blanket. All right. I'm going to end the stream, but I will try to do more tutorials. I did kind of feel nice doing it. I'm just very shy about it right now because, again, I haven't done this before. So I will be on in probably a few hours. And that is completely vague. Probably a few hours. But I guess next time I start streaming is next time I start streaming. I will say right now it is 2:41 p.m. my time. So I will start streaming in about 2 hours 19 minutes. So about 5 p.m. my time. That's assuming if I do stream. If I'm not streaming at 5 p.m., then I probably won't stream for the full day, assuming anything happens that stops me from streaming at 5 p.m. my time, or 17 my time if you go by military time. So, peace. I had fun.